Emily Carter thought she was just cleaning another hospital hallway on a cold Chicago night, until she watched the most powerful mafia boss in the city walk away, believing his beautiful fiancée was lovingly caring for his mother. Seconds later, Emily witnessed a secret that could destroy an empire. A mysterious blue liquid, a frightened old woman, and a whispered promise that no one would ever believe a maid. But when the one woman everyone overlooked refused to stay silent, she uncovered a betrayal reaching back nearly 20 years and forced a ruthless mafia boss to choose between the woman he loved and the truth that could save his family. Cold rain streaked the tall windows of Lakeview Crown Recovery Center, turning the lights of downtown Chicago into blurred ribbons of gold and blue. Emily Carter pushed her cleaning cart through the silent hallway, unnoticed as always. At 30, curvy, black, and dressed in a plain gray uniform, she had learned that people rarely looked beyond the mop in her hands. Tonight felt no different until she heard a weak cough from Margaret Cole's room. Nathan Cole stood outside the glass, watching with quiet relief as his elegant fiancée, Vanessa Grant, gently lifted a cup to his mother's lips. From where he stood, she looked like the perfect future daughter-in-law. When his phone vibrated, Nathan stepped away to answer a call, leaving the hallway wrapped in silence. The moment he disappeared, Vanessa's smile vanished. She gripped Margaret's chin hard enough to stop the older woman's trembling. From her pocket came a tiny blue vial. She emptied its contents into the cup, stirred once, and whispered, "Soon you won't remember how to sign your own name. Then everything will belong where it always should have." Margaret tried to resist, but Vanessa calmly forced the drink between her lips. Emily froze behind her cleaning cart. The wheels stopped rolling. Her heartbeat echoed louder than the rain outside. She wanted to rush in, yet every instinct warned her that one wrong move could cost her the only job keeping a roof over her head. Vanessa slowly turned toward the doorway. Their eyes met. For one endless second, neither woman spoke. Then Vanessa smiled again, soft and graceful, as though kindness had never left her face. She walked toward Emily, adjusted the name tag on the maid's uniform, and leaned close enough for Emily to smell expensive perfume. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "You want to remember what you think you saw tonight?" Emily could not answer. Behind Vanessa, Margaret's frightened eyes silently pleaded for help, and somewhere down the hallway, Nathan Cole was already walking back, completely unaware that the woman he trusted most had just become the greatest danger to his family. Emily forced herself to move before panic rooted her to the floor. By the time Nathan returned, Vanessa was once again the picture of grace, adjusting Margaret's blanket with gentle hands and a warm smile. Nathan thanked his fiancée with quiet relief, never noticing the fear still lingering in his mother's eyes. The moment his footsteps faded, Emily hurried to Helen Price's office. Her words tumbled out between shallow breaths as she described the blue liquid, Margaret's struggle, and Vanessa's whispered threat. Helen stared at her for only a second before letting out a tired sigh. "Emily, do you understand who Vanessa Grant is?" she asked. "Her foundation practically keeps this place running. She spent months caring for Mrs. Cole while you've been pushing a mop." Emily insisted she wasn't mistaken. Helen folded her arms. "Years ago, you claimed doctors ignored your concerns about your own mother. You were wrong then, and you're letting that grief cloud your judgment now." The words struck deeper than Emily expected. She remembered standing in another hospital hallway, begging strangers to listen before cancer stole the only family she had left. No one had believed her then either. Later that afternoon, attendants prepared Margaret for transfer to Nathan's penthouse. Rain tapped softly against the ambulance doors as Emily quietly adjusted the older woman's blanket one last time. Margaret's trembling hand reached out. Her fingers wrapped around Emily's wrist with surprising strength. Slowly, painfully, she traced 4 letters across Emily's palm. B. E. Before Emily could ask what it meant, Margaret was wheeled away. Long after the ambulance disappeared, Emily returned to the empty room. Something caught her eye inside the medical waste bin. A tiny glass vial, blue residue clung to its inner wall. She reached for it. A voice behind her calmly said, "Looking for something?" Emily spun around. The vial was gone. Only an elderly nurse stood in the doorway, quietly replacing a fresh trash liner, as though nothing unusual had happened. Emily searched the room one last time before leaving with more questions than answers. 2 restless days passed. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Margaret tracing the word blue across her palm. She replayed Vanessa's smile and Helen's disbelief until sleep became impossible. Her tiny apartment above a corner grocery felt smaller each night. Yet she refused to convince herself she had imagined anything. On the 3rd morning, the rumble of powerful engines echoed through the narrow street outside. 3 black SUVs stopped in front of the aging apartment building. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Children stopped bouncing a basketball. Emily froze beside her window. A tall man in a dark suit stepped out first. "Miss Emily Carter?" he asked after she opened the building door. She nodded carefully. "I'm Jack Miller. Mr. Nathan Cole has requested your presence." Emily's heart tightened. "I think you've made a mistake." "I don't." Jack explained that Margaret had refused food, therapy, and conversation since leaving Lakeview Crown. The only name she continued repeating was Emily's. Minutes later, Emily climbed into the last SUV, watching her worn neighborhood disappear behind tinted glass. The skyline grew brighter as they crossed the Chicago River toward the Cole penthouse, where private elevators, armored doors, and silent security guards replaced cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights. Everything felt impossibly distant from the life she knew. That evening, unable to sleep, Emily wandered into a quiet library searching for water. Voices stopped her. Nathan stood beside a fireplace, facing a frightened man in an expensive suit. No shouting, no threats, only one calm question. "Who have you been selling my shipping schedules to?" The man's silence answered more than words ever could. Emily quietly stepped back, realizing the powerful businessman everyone admired lived inside a far more dangerous world than newspapers ever described. A floorboard creaked beneath her shoe. Nathan slowly turned toward the doorway. Their eyes met. "Tell me," he said evenly, "why are you really so determined to save my mother?" Emily took one steady breath. "Because someone isn't treating her illness." She looked directly into his eyes. "They're making her sicker." Silence settled over the library. The crackling fireplace seemed louder than either heartbeat. Nathan Cole studied Emily without speaking, searching her face for panic, greed, or deception. He found only exhaustion. Vanessa appeared in the doorway carrying a silver tray with tea. Her smile arrived before her words. "Nathan, your mother finally fell asleep." Then she noticed Emily. "What an interesting conversation." Emily refused to lower her eyes. Mrs. Cole becomes confused after drinking something that isn't part of her prescribed medication. Vanessa laughed softly. She's a cleaning lady, Nathan. Now she's pretending to practice medicine. Nathan raised one hand before either woman could continue. Facts, he said calmly. I only care about facts. That night, Emily waited until the penthouse had grown quiet. She slipped into the kitchen where Margaret's medication was organized with military precision. Every bottle matched the doctor's records except one slender glass ampule tucked behind a row of vitamins. Inside rested the same pale blue liquid she had seen at Lakeview Crown. Her pulse quickened. Using the camera on her old phone, she photographed the label and zoomed in until a faded manufacturing code became visible. Hours later, sitting alone beneath the glow of her laptop in the dark service kitchen, she searched medical journals, archived pharmaceutical notices, and discontinued clinical trials. One document finally stopped her cold. The code belonged to an experimental neurological compound suspended years earlier after patients developed symptoms that closely resembled temporary dementia. Emily printed the report before dawn. The following morning, she placed the pages in front of Nathan. This isn't proof that someone poisoned your mother, she said quietly. But it proves this drug should never be in her home. Before Nathan could answer, Vanessa picked up the papers. These? She asked with a pitying smile. Anyone can print articles from the internet. She's obsessed with my care for Margaret because she wants to become indispensable. She turned to Nathan. Search her room. You'll probably find more stolen medical files. Nathan remained silent for a long moment. Then he folded the report and looked directly at Emily. You have 48 hours, he said evenly. Bring me undeniable proof. His gaze shifted toward Vanessa. After that, I will believe one of you. Emily nodded without arguing. She knew trust could not be demanded. It had to be earned. Over the next 2 days, she stopped chasing evidence and started focusing on Margaret instead. Every morning, she opened the curtains just enough to let the soft light spill across the room. She played old jazz records from the singer Margaret had once loved, read short newspaper stories aloud, and encouraged her to repeat simple words instead of struggling through long sentences. Vanessa watched with quiet irritation. She's wasting her time, she said more than once. Yet Nathan noticed something different. Margaret no longer turned away from every meal. Her breathing slowed whenever Emily entered the room. Sometimes she even smiled before recognizing anyone else. One evening, Nathan found Emily sitting beside the sofa with a notebook full of simple memory exercises. 2 untouched cups of coffee had grown cold on the table. You've been here all night, he observed. Emily shrugged. Healing doesn't follow a schedule. Nathan reached for the pistol resting beneath his jacket before entering his mother's room. Emily gently stopped him. The sound of metal frightens her. Would you leave it outside? For a moment, the bodyguards looked stunned. No one told Nathan Cole what to do. He looked toward his mother, then quietly removed the weapon and handed it to Jack. No one spoke. Later that night, Nathan stood beside the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. Emily joined him with 2 fresh cups of coffee. You don't have to stay, he said. I know. After a long silence, Nathan admitted, when my father died, I promised I'd never fail my family again. Emily looked across the city lights. Sometimes protecting people starts with listening to them. Before Nathan could answer, a weak voice drifted across the room. Emily. Both turned instantly. Margaret's eyes had opened. For only a few precious seconds, they were clear. She reached for Emily's hand and whispered with painful effort. Don't trust the doctor. Her strength disappeared as quickly as it had returned. Nathan stared at his mother in disbelief. For the first time since Emily entered his home, doubt quietly began replacing certainty. The following morning, he canceled every meeting except one. "Bring Dr. Aaron Blake here," he told Jack. Blake arrived carrying the same confidence that had earned the Cole family's trust for years. He reviewed Margaret's chart, smiled reassuringly, and explained that moments of clarity often appeared during neurological decline. His words sounded polished, almost rehearsed. Emily remained silent until he left the room. "When were her medications changed?" she asked. Nathan looked at the records. Every adjustment bore Blake's signature. Emily requested permission to compare the handwritten charts with the digital files. Hours passed as she studied dates, dosage changes, and laboratory reports. One entry caught her attention. Margaret's prescription had been increased 3 different times within 6 weeks, yet no medical explanation had been recorded. She slid the folder toward Nathan. "A careful doctor documents every change." Nathan frowned. "Aaron has treated my family for 12 years. "I'm not asking you to accuse him," Emily replied softly. "I'm asking you to verify him." Nathan looked through the window toward the city below. Trust had built his empire. Betrayal had nearly destroyed it more than once. "What do you need?" he finally asked. "An independent blood test." He nodded once. "You'll have it." Neither of them noticed Vanessa standing outside the partially open door. She watched Nathan agree without arguing. For the first time, he had accepted Emily's judgment before hers. Something cold settled behind Vanessa's smile. That evening, while Emily returned to her room, her phone vibrated. An unknown number. She opened the message. A photograph filled the screen. It showed her mother lying in a hospital bed years earlier, weak but still smiling. Beneath the image appeared a single sentence. "You couldn't save her. You won't save this one either." Emily's hands trembled, but she refused to delete the message. Instead, she looked toward Margaret's room across the hallway. "They wanted me to give up once before," she whispered to herself. "I'm not walking away again." Somewhere else inside the penthouse, Vanessa quietly erased the message from the sending device, convinced fear would accomplish what lies no longer could. 2 nights later, the Cole family hosted an elegant dinner for attorneys, investors, and senior executives from Cole Logistics. Crystal chandeliers reflected across the floor-to-ceiling windows, while Chicago shimmered beyond the glass. Emily stayed close to Margaret, helping her through the crowded evening without drawing attention to herself. Vanessa had another plan. As waiters poured wine, she crossed the room carrying a delicate crystal glass. Just as Emily stepped aside with Margaret's wheelchair, Vanessa stumbled. Red wine splashed across her white designer gown. "You pushed me!" Vanessa gasped. Every conversation stopped. Emily stared in disbelief. "I never touched you." Before anyone could answer, Vanessa lifted a trembling hand to her neck. My grandmother's diamond bracelet. It was gone. The room erupted into whispers. Helen Price stepped forward from the guests. "I warned everyone Emily had become obsessed with this family. She has a history of making dramatic accusations." Jack searched the ballroom while security quietly locked every exit. Minutes later, one guard reached into the pocket of Emily's coat, hanging beside the service entrance. A diamond bracelet sparkled beneath the lights. The silence that followed hurt more than the accusation. Emily felt dozens of strangers judging her before she spoke a single word. To them, she was no longer the woman caring for Margaret. She was simply the maid caught stealing from people richer than she could ever imagine. Nathan slowly walked toward her. His face revealed nothing. "Emily," he said calmly, "did you take it?" The question landed like a wound. She looked into his eyes, not with anger, but with quiet heartbreak. "If you need this room to tell you who I am," she said softly, "then you never truly saw me in the first place." Without another word, she removed the staff badge from her jacket and placed it on the table. For the first time since entering Nathan Cole's world, she chose to walk away instead of defending herself. Nathan watched her leave, but something deep inside him refused to believe the evidence lying in plain sight. "Jack," he said quietly, "lock every door. No one leaves." The ballroom fell silent. Vanessa forced a nervous smile. "Nathan, the bracelet has already been found. Why embarrass everyone further?" "Because the truth deserves better than assumptions." Jack immediately pulled up the penthouse security records. Every guest, every delivery, every employee had been logged since sunrise. Minutes later, another guard hurried over carrying a small flower box that had arrived earlier that afternoon. "It came after Miss Carter reported for duty," Jack said. Nathan opened the decorative foam inside the box. There, hidden beneath fresh white roses, rested a velvet pouch, identical to the one that had originally held the Cole family bracelet. Emily slowly turned back from the doorway. Jack continued reviewing the recordings. A delivery man briefly entered the staff hallway before disappearing from camera view. When he returned, the flower box was empty. Emily stared at the paused image. "Zoom in on his wrist." Jack enlarged the frame. A dark tattoo appeared just above the man's watch. Emily's expression changed instantly. "I've seen that symbol before." Everyone looked at her. It was printed on the shipping label attached to the blue medical ampule. Nathan's eyes narrowed. The bracelet and the mysterious drug were no longer separate incidents. Someone had carefully connected them. Nathan stepped into the center of the room. "No one will accuse Emily Carter again." His calm voice carried farther than a shout. "She leaves this room with her name untouched." The tension broke like glass. Some guests lowered their eyes in embarrassment. Others quietly apologized. Helen stood speechless, unable to defend her earlier claims. Emily accepted none of it. She looked at Nathan with quiet disappointment. "You protected me today," she said. "But you also allowed doubt to stand beside me until someone else proved I deserved better." Nathan had no answer. As Emily walked past Vanessa, the elegant smile returned to the other woman's face. She leaned close enough for only Emily to hear. "You've just made Nathan lose his mother." Emily stopped. For the first time that evening, genuine fear replaced relief. Before she could question Vanessa, every light inside the penthouse suddenly died. The city skyline vanished beyond the towering windows. Crystal chandeliers faded into darkness. A heartbeat later, emergency alarms echoed through the halls. "Backup power!" Jack shouted. Bodyguards rushed in every direction while guests froze in confusion. Nathan reached for a flashlight instead of his phone. Years of surviving betrayal had taught him that darkness was rarely an accident. Exactly 7 minutes later, the generators roared to life. The lights returned. A guard lay unconscious near the service elevator. Its doors stood open. Margaret's wheelchair was empty. "No!" Emily cried, running into the hallway. Nathan's voice cut through the panic. "Seal every exit, lock down the garage, call the airport, the harbor, every highway checkpoint. Nobody leaves this city unnoticed." Black SUVs poured from the underground garage within minutes, scattering across Chicago beneath cold sheets of rain. Jack monitored Margaret's medical tracking bracelet from the security center. "We lost her signal," he said. "It disappeared all at once." Emily stared at the screen. "No," she whispered. "It didn't disappear." She pointed to the final location. "It stopped transmitting because whoever took her entered a place that blocks wireless signals." Nathan looked at her. "You know where?" "Not yet." Emily hurried back into Margaret's bedroom. The blanket had been pulled aside during the struggle. Resting beneath the pillow was a torn piece of pale blue fabric carrying a sharp chemical smell. She closed her eyes. "The cold storage disinfectant," she murmured. "I smelled this at Lakeview Crown when refrigerated medicines arrived." Nathan unfolded a city logistics map across the dining table. Emily traced her finger south toward the industrial waterfront. "The old refrigerated warehouse at Calumet Harbor." Jack's expression changed immediately. "That building belongs to Cole Logistics." Nathan's jaw tightened. Only 3 people possessed the security code for that warehouse. He, Jack, and Martin Shaw, the financial advisor who had served his family since before his father died. Nathan looked at the map in silence. For the first time in years, he wondered whether the man he had trusted most had been leading him toward betrayal all along. Rain hammered the windshield as the convoy raced toward Calumet Harbor. Red taillights stretched across the wet pavement like glowing scars. No one spoke until Emily finally broke the silence. "You don't have to apologize," she said quietly. Nathan kept his eyes on the road ahead. "I do." His voice was lower than she had ever heard it. "I thought trust meant waiting for proof. I never realized it also meant protecting someone before the proof arrived." Emily looked out at the dark lake beyond the highway. "Believing the truth isn't the same as believing a person." Nathan nodded once. "I know that now." The abandoned warehouse stood beneath flickering security lights, its metal walls wrapped in fog rolling off the harbor. Jack led a team through the main entrance, while Nathan and Emily slipped through a side loading door. Cold air filled every corridor. In the center of the building sat Margaret, unconscious but breathing steadily, surrounded by medical files, laboratory tubes, and legal documents declaring her mentally incapable of controlling the Cole family shares. Emily hurried to her side. "She's alive." Nathan's relief lasted only a moment. Slow applause echoed through the warehouse. Dr. Aaron Blake stepped from the shadows with several armed men behind him. "You were always too curious, Emily," he said calmly. Nathan moved in front of her. "Why?" Blake smiled without emotion. "Because this was never only about Margaret's signature." He gestured toward the stacks of forged records. Once she was declared incompetent, Vanessa would inherit control after the wedding. Then one carefully planned explosion would remove the grieving son, leaving the empire leaderless. Nathan stared at him. "You murdered my family for money?" Blake shook his head. "No." He looked directly into Nathan's eyes. "The man who began all this has been standing beside you since the day your father died." The warehouse fell silent. Blake's final words echoed through the freezing air. "You've been trusting the wrong man for nearly 20 years." Nathan barely had time to react before the warehouse alarms erupted. A sharp crack echoed through the frozen room as a ricocheting fragment struck a steel beam, forcing everyone to dive for cover. Jack's team was trapped behind a security gate that slammed shut from the outside. Emily ignored the chaos. Margaret's breathing had become shallow. She grabbed the emergency medical kit beside the examination table, checked Margaret's pulse, and steadied her with calm, practiced hands. "Stay with me," she whispered. "You're going home tonight." Across the room, Blake pulled a portable drive from a locked cabinet. "Everything ends here." He threw another switch. Warning lights flashed red as the warehouse announced an emergency ammonia release. Thick white vapor began spilling across the concrete floor while sprinklers roared to life. Emily spotted the drive sliding beneath a metal cabinet after Blake dropped it during the confusion. Without hesitation, she crawled through the freezing water, reached beneath the cabinet, and closed her fingers around it. Blake seized her arm. "Give it back." Emily looked at the heavy gas cylinder standing beside him. Instead of fighting him directly, she shoved the cylinder hard enough to send it rolling across the slick floor. Blake instinctively stepped back. The distraction lasted only a second. It was enough. Nathan lunged forward and forced Blake to the ground, while Jack finally broke through the security gate with the rest of the team. Emily hurried back to Margaret, still clutching the drive against her chest. Later, inside the command vehicle, technicians opened its encrypted files. Silence filled the screen. Financial transfers, private schedules, secret communications. One name appeared again and again: Martin Shaw. For nearly 20 years, Nathan's trusted financial advisor had secretly worked with William Grant, Vanessa's father. Hidden records revealed Martin had leaked Nathan's father's travel plans on the night he was killed, beginning the conspiracy that had nearly destroyed the Cole family. Then one final file appeared. Vanessa was already on her way to the charity gala. Within hours, she intended to announce that Nathan was no longer fit to lead the empire. Emily closed the laptop. "The real battle," she said quietly, "hasn't even started." The charity gala overlooking the Chicago River glittered beneath thousands of lights. Reporters crowded the entrance while business leaders gathered inside, unaware that the future of the Cole family would be decided before the night was over. Vanessa stepped onto the stage first. With calm confidence, she described herself as the loyal fiancée who had stood beside Nathan through every hardship. Then she claimed the recent chaos had been caused by a desperate maid who had manipulated a grieving family for personal gain. A murmur spread through the ballroom. The grand doors opened. Nathan entered with his arm in a sling, but instead of taking the microphone himself, he stopped beside the stage and looked at Emily. "It's your story," he said. "They deserve to hear it from you." Emily slowly walked forward. She presented the medical reports, the laboratory records, the warehouse evidence, and finally, the recovered drive. Screen after screen revealed the experimental drug, the forged blood samples, the kidnapping plan, and years of secret payments linking Martin Shaw, Dr. Blake, Vanessa, and William Grant. The room fell silent. Then another door opened. Margaret entered in her wheelchair, alert enough to speak for herself. With steady determination, she confirmed Emily had been telling the truth from the very beginning. Within minutes, investigators escorted Vanessa, Martin, and the remaining conspirators from the ballroom as cameras captured every moment. No shouting followed. The evidence spoke louder than anyone could. After the guests quietly departed, Nathan stood beside Emily on the terrace overlooking the water. "You didn't just save my mother," he said. "You taught me that power means nothing if I stop listening." 1 year later, sunlight filled the gardens outside the newly opened Carter Foundation overlooking Lake Michigan. Emily had completed her pharmacy degree and dedicated her work to protecting elderly patients from medical abuse. Nathan had begun separating his legitimate businesses from the shadows of his old empire, choosing trust over fear one decision at a time. Beneath the blooming trees, with Margaret smiling nearby, He asked Emily to spend the rest of her life with him. She smiled before answering yes. The woman everyone once overlooked had changed a family, transformed an empire, and proved that courage is often quiet enough to be mistaken for kindness, until it changes everything. When Nathan stepped aside and handed the microphone to Emily instead of speaking for her, that wasn't just the moment the truth won. It was the moment he finally learned to trust the person who had been quietly saving his family from the very beginning. This story reminds us that trust is built through actions, not promises. The people who truly earn your confidence are often the ones who keep showing up long before anyone else notices their worth. Today, think about someone who has quietly stood by you the way Emily stood by Margaret and Nathan. Don't wait for a crisis to let them know they matter, because genuine trust grows one small action at a time. Have you ever had someone believe in you when almost no one else did? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if Emily's journey stayed with you, let us know what part touched you the most. There's another unforgettable story waiting in the next video, and you won't want to miss how it begins.